Some systems are there to make one powerful, but this system is going to make Naruto beyond broken. Sit back, relax, and enjoy.
There are worlds where Naruto Uzumaki grows up starving for scraps of attention, clawing his way up from nothing with nothing but stubbornness and a fox's borrowed strength. This is not that world. In this world, something else found Naruto first. Something that had no business being in his body at all, and it changed everything. It happened on an ordinary afternoon when Naruto was 5 years old. He was sitting alone by the swing outside the academy, poking at his own stomach the way small children do when they are bored and have nobody to play with. He tapped his belly once, twice, and on the third tap, the world in front of him changed. A thin blue bar appeared, hovering just above his skin, visible to him and nobody else. Beneath it, words he was too young to fully read but somehow understood anyway. Health, chakra, control, speed, defense, offense. Every single one of them read 0. Naruto blinked at it, tilted his head, and poked it again. Nothing exploded. Nothing screamed. The bar simply sat there, patient, waiting. He shrugged the way only a 5-year-old can shrug at something that should have terrified him, and went back to playing in the dirt, kicking rocks and climbing on the low fence outside the orphanage. He didn't think about it again until he noticed something strange that evening. A small number had appeared next to strength. A single point. It took him another week of idle running and jumping and climbing before he understood the pattern. Every time he pushed his body past what was comfortable, the bar rewarded him. He didn't know the word for training yet. He only knew that if he ran until his legs burned, or held his breath until his lungs screamed, a point would appear somewhere on that glowing chart only he could see. So he did what any lonely 5-year-old with a secret toy would do. He pushed himself over and over for the rest of the day, until by nightfall he had earned 15 points. He stared at the 6 categories for a long while, his small finger hovering over each one. Health, strength, speed, endurance, chakra, control. In the end, he chose strength, dumping all 15 points into it at once because he liked the idea of being strong enough that nobody could push him around anymore. The next morning, he found an old fallen tree near the training grounds and, mostly out of curiosity, punched it as hard as he could. The bark split down the middle with a crack that echoed through the empty field. Naruto stood there staring at his own fist, mouth hanging open, and from that day forward, he never told a single soul about the bar. It became his secret, his own private world, hidden just beneath the surface of his skin. He trained every single day after that. Nobody paid him any mind. He was just the loud orphan boy nobody wanted to sit with, off doing whatever loud orphan boys did in the woods. Nobody realized that with every fall he took, every wall he climbed, every hour he spent pushing his small body further than it should have been able to go, he was quietly becoming something the village had no name for yet. 2 years passed. Naruto was 7 now, and the numbers on his bar had climbed far beyond what any child his age should have carried. It was around this time that Suzuki Uchiha first caught a glimpse of what Naruto truly was, entirely by accident. Suzuki had wandered out past the academy grounds one afternoon, searching for a quiet place to practice his shuriken throws away from prying eyes, and instead found Naruto bouncing off the earth itself. He watched, frozen behind a tree, as Naruto pressed one bare foot into the dirt and launched himself into the air with a force that cracked the ground beneath him, clearing the tops of several trees before landing in a crouch on a thick branch as though it were nothing at all. Suzuki's mind refused to accept what his eyes were showing him. This was the same boy who fumbled every basic drill in class, who couldn't land a single punch on the training dummy without stumbling. It made no sense. He crept closer, careful not to snap a twig, but Naruto had already sensed him. By the time Suzuki reached the clearing, it was empty. He spun in a slow circle, searching the trees, utterly baffled, while high above him, hidden in the thick canopy, Naruto watched with a small, knowing grin, waiting patiently until Sasuke finally gave up and wandered back toward the village, muttering to himself about needing more sleep. Naruto dropped back down once he was certain he was alone, and the training continued. Day in and day out. Health climbing. Strength climbing. Speed, endurance, defense, control, chakra, all of it climbing together, slow and steady, a foundation being poured brick by brick in complete secrecy. It was around the age of 8 that Naruto met something that would change the shape of his life forever, though not in the way anyone might have expected. He had drifted into a strange, dreamlike state during one of his deeper meditation sessions, something he had started doing on instinct to help control the swelling pool of chakra inside him, and found himself standing ankle-deep in water inside a dim, cavernous space lined with pipes and iron bars. Behind those bars sat a massive shape with fur the color of dried blood and eyes like twin furnaces. Naruto's breath caught in his throat. He knew, somehow, exactly what he was looking at. "You're the Nine Tails," Naruto said, his voice smaller than he wanted it to be. The great beast let out something between a laugh and a sigh. "Wrong," it said. "I only wear its shape because that is the shape your seal expected to hold. I am not the fox, boy. I never was." Naruto stepped closer, curiosity chasing away the fear the way it always did for him. The creature explained, in its own slow and ancient way, that on the night it was sealed inside him, something had gone terribly wrong. It hadn't belonged in this world to begin with. It had simply been passing through, brushing against the edge of reality the way smoke dripped through a cracked door, when the seal meant for the Nine Tails caught it instead and dragged it down into the boy. It came from somewhere far older and far higher than the world of chakra and shinobi. It had never been built for destruction, though it understood why people might assume that of something so large and strange. Whatever purpose it once served, that purpose belonged to another place entirely, and its history was long and vague and complicated even to itself. It told Naruto that the bar, the strange glowing system that had followed him since he was 5, had come from its own presence bleeding into his growing body, the two of them tangled together inside the seal until his very chakra coils had adapted around it, treating power itself as something that could be counted, spent, and grown. "So I'm stuck with you," Naruto said, not unkindly. "And I am stuck with you," it replied. "Though I find I do not mind it as much as I expected to," it admitted, almost sheepishly for something so enormous, that it could step freely through the bars separating them, wander the corridors of Naruto's mind, but it could never leave his body entirely. They were bound. And it had never had anything close to a friend before this. It had never truly existed as anything at all until it landed inside this loud, stubborn little boy. It asked him, eventually, why he had never told a single soul about the bar, not even the old Hokage. Naruto shrugged and admitted he didn't really have a reason beyond wanting to max everything out first, see how far it could go, before anyone else got involved and started telling him what to do with it. The creature wasn't at all certain that was something a human body could survive doing, given everything it had witnessed of this world so far, but it kept that thought to itself. Naruto grinned and told the beast it needed a name. It had been alone and nameless for longer than it could remember, and an 8-year-old boy with a mischievous streak was exactly the wrong person to hand that responsibility to. After several truly terrible suggestions, Naruto finally landed on one that made him laugh so hard he nearly fell over. Noodle. The great beast stared at him for a long moment through the bars, something that might have been the ghost of amusement flickering behind those furnace eyes, and then it simply said, "Fine." And so it became Noodle, and Naruto had, in his own strange way, made his very first true friend. Time moved on, and Naruto kept climbing, kept hiding, kept smiling his same loud goofy smile at the academy while carrying a secret so enormous it would have shattered the entire village's understanding of what he was. But Naruto was, underneath everything, a kind and gentle boy, and that kindness is what brought Sakura Haruno into his life. They had met when Naruto was 7, on a day when a pack of older kids had cornered Sakura near the market and started teasing her about her forehead. Naruto, small and loud and utterly fearless in the way only children can be, had marched right up and scared the group off with nothing but sheer noise and attitude. Sakura never forgot it. Despite what the other children whispered about him, despite the strange looks adults gave him when they thought he wasn't watching, she stayed his friend. One rainy afternoon when Naruto was 9, Sakura had wanted to visit the market for a sweet treat sold only in Konoha for a single day each year, but the sky had opened up into a downpour that threatened to wash the whole stall away before they got there. Naruto, feeling playful and perhaps a little proud, decided to show her a fraction of what he could really do, though she would never understand exactly what she was witnessing. He took one long breath in, filled his lungs completely, and exhaled with every ounce of strength and defense stacked inside his growing body. The clouds over Konoha physically parted, rolled back like a curtain being yanked open, clearing a wide blue circle of sky directly above the market. Sakura gasped in delight, certain the rain had simply passed, clapping her hands together and pulling Naruto along by the wrist toward the stall before the moment could end. She never knew, none the wiser. That is how strong Naruto was. 309,000. Speed 296,000. Endurance 311,000. Defense 274,000. Chakra 332,000. Control 261,000. A trained Chang in his prime might carry stats scraping into the low hundreds. A talented Jonin, on an exceptional day, might push past 300 or 400 in one category if they had spent a lifetime specializing in it. Naruto carried numbers in the high hundreds of thousands across every single category at once, and he had not even finished growing yet. His senses had sharpened right alongside everything else, his hearing keen enough to catch a held breath 2 streets away, his eyes able to pick out the flick of a bird's wing from a rooftop half a mile off. He could taste the difference in the air before a storm rolled in. He could feel the vibration of footsteps through solid stone. And still, he kept training, because in his mind, he had not reached the top of the bar yet, and until he did, none of it counted as finished. He believed, on the night everything changed again, that he had gone about as far as a boy his age reasonably could. That belief lasted until he stumbled onto Mizuki in the forest, halfway through stealing the forbidden scroll from the Hokage Zone vault. Naruto recognized the scroll immediately, the weight of what he was looking at settling over him even before Mizuki noticed he wasn't alone. Mizuki spun on him with a snarl and hurled a shuriken at his throat without a second of hesitation. Naruto caught it, without thinking, 2 fingers closing around a spinning blade like he was plucking a leaf out of the air. Mizuki froze mid-step, disbelief written plainly across his face, before charging in anyway, driven more by panic than strategy. Naruto blocked every strike without effort, almost lazily, the whole exchange taking on an almost comedic rhythm, because at this point, actual danger simply didn't register to him the way it once might have. He understood Mizuki was dangerous to someone. He simply wasn't dangerous to him. So Naruto punched him. It was the first time in his life he had ever truly thrown a punch meant to hurt someone, and the result staggered even him. Mizuki didn't go flying backward the way people always do in stories. His body simply gave out on impact, bones shattering beneath the force, folding in on himself as he crumpled to the forest floor in a broken heap. By the time the Umbu tracked the commotion to their location, Naruto was standing over him, scroll tucked under one arm, calmly explaining what had happened as though he hadn't just leveled a grown man with a single blow. He used the moment, deliberately, to mention that Mizuki had said something about the 9 tails. He already knew the truth, had known it for a long time thanks to Noodle, but he let the Hokage believe otherwise, wanting to hear it from the old man's own mouth. When Hiruzen finally sat him down and told him everything, Naruto listened quietly, and somewhere deep inside, Noodle asked him gently whether this changed how he felt about the old man lying to him for so many years. Naruto admitted it stung, more than he expected, even though some small part of him understood exactly why the Hokage had made that choice. Understanding didn't erase the hurt. It just made it easier to carry. The next morning, Naruto passed his graduation exam with flying colors. The whole class stunned when he executed a perfect transformation on his very first attempt, and he was placed on Team 7 alongside Sasuke Uchiha and Sakura Haruno. Sakura was thrilled to be paired with her closest friend, though her heart still fluttered every time Sasuke so much as glanced her way. The bell test came and went easily enough. Naruto let Kakashi believe he was simply lucky, simply clumsy, simply the same loud underdog everyone assumed him to be, never once showing the true depth of what lived beneath his skin. Then came the mission to the Land of Waves, and that is where things finally began to slip out of his control. The demon brothers ambushed them early, bursting from beneath the water with chains meant to tear Kakashi apart. Naruto reacted before anyone else could blink, driving his heel into the earth with such precise, contained force that a shockwave rippled outward from the point of impact, launching both attackers clean off their feet and slamming them unconscious into the mud before they even understood what had hit them. Kakashi turned, brow furrowed beneath his mask, clearly puzzled by what he had just witnessed, but Naruto had already schooled his face back into wide-eyed confusion, playing the part of the surprised genin perfectly. When Zabuza finally revealed himself and clashed with Kakashi in the mist, Naruto slipped away from the group unnoticed. He found a boulder half buried in the dirt, wrapped his fingers around its jagged edge, and simply crushed it, grinding the surface smooth between his fingers the way another person might roll dough. He hurled the polished stone with a flick of his wrist, and it struck Zabuza clean across the skull, dropping the man instantly. Before anyone could process what had happened, Haku descended from the trees, intercepting Kakashi's follow-up strike and vanishing in a swirl of ice needles, revealing his bloodline in the process. Kakashi stood there for a long moment, quietly recalibrating everything he thought he understood about this mission, about this team, about the strange orange-clad boy who somehow kept ending up at the center of things he shouldn't have survived. By the time the fight reached the bridge, Naruto arrived late, having doubled back first to pull Inari and Tsunami to safety from Gathou's men without either of them ever realizing who had actually saved them. He found Suzuki trapped, breathing hard, surrounded by a glittering dome of ice mirrors with Haku darting between them faster than the eye could follow. Naruto didn't hesitate. He drew in an enormous breath and simply swallowed the mist whole, the fog and moisture vanishing from the air around them in one great pull, clearing the battlefield in an instant. The ice mirrors followed shortly after, Naruto tearing through them with his bare hands, biting straight through the frozen shards without so much as a flinch, the cold meaning absolutely nothing against a body built on numbers no one else could see. Haku staggered back in stunned silence. Suzuki stared, utterly unable to process how Naruto had even entered the dome to begin with, certain for a moment that his eyes had simply failed him, some blur of motion too fast to track. Naruto crossed the space between the shattered mirrors in the same instant, striking down every remaining panel of ice at once, forcing Haku out of his technique entirely. When Haku lunged at him in desperation, Naruto simply flicked one finger against his forehead, and the boy dropped instantly into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, Zabuza had lost his mist without understanding why, leaving him wide open for Kakashi to finally close the gap and bring him to his knees. Gato arrived moments later with his hired thugs, revealing his plan to betray Zabuza all along, though by that point it changed nothing about the outcome he had already earned for himself. While the others were distracted, Naruto slipped beneath the bridge unseen and knelt at the water's edge. He began striking the surface with the flat of his palm, faster and faster, the water beginning to churn and bubble violently beneath the assault, until finally he drove his hand down with the full weight of everything he had built inside himself. A wall of water erupted outward, crushing and blinding, slamming into Gato and every one of his men at once. Naruto rose back up through the spray a moment later, and where any ordinary shinobi might have simply knocked them into the current, Naruto struck the water itself hard enough to turn it solid for the span of a heartbeat, crushing every bone in their bodies in an instant before dragging them down beneath the surface for good. Inside his mind, Noodle watched it all unfold with something that almost sounded like pride, murmuring quietly that Naruto really had become something the world had no name for yet, and Naruto, breathing hard on the surface, couldn't help but agree with him. He thought he had gotten away with it. He thought no one had seen. He was wrong. Kakashi had grown suspicious days earlier, ever since the incident with the Demon Brothers, and had quietly left a shadow clone stationed beneath the bridge the entire time, watching everything unfold from the shadows. As Naruto tried to slip back up onto the bridge unnoticed, he found Kakashi standing directly in his path, arms crossed, one visible eye narrowed with a question that had clearly been building for days. "So," Kakashi said, his voice deceptively calm. "Care to tell me how you did that?" Naruto froze completely, eyes going wide, every carefully maintained secret suddenly hanging by a single thread. Time skip. By the time they returned to Konoha, the story had grown into something far too large to keep contained. Naruto stood in the Hokage's office, Kakashi at his side, the doors closed and the room empty of anyone but the three of them. Naruto explained everything, the bar, the years of secret training, the being he had come to call Noodle, all of it laid bare in a rush of words 5 years overdue. Harrison listened with the calm, unreadable patience of a man who had heard a great many strange things in his lifetime, but even he struggled to fully absorb what he was being told. He asked Naruto to prove it, gently, almost gently enough to sound like disbelief. Naruto reached over, picked the smooth stone paperweight off the Hokage's desk without so much as looking at it, and hurled it through the closed window. Glass exploded outward in a glittering spray, and the stone did not stop, sailing clean over the rooftops of Konoha and vanishing somewhere past the horizon. Hiruzen sat there in silence for a long moment, staring at the shattered window, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he looked genuinely, deeply unsettled. When the shock finally passed, the conversation turned serious. Hiruzen told Naruto plainly that he needed to keep this hidden, at least for now. Power of this magnitude, if word of it spread too quickly, would draw the wrong kind of attention from the wrong kind of people. Enemies of the village would either want to eliminate him before he grew any stronger, or worse, find some way to turn him against the very home that raised him. But beneath the strategic caution, Hiruzen carried something heavier, a private, nagging worry he didn't say aloud. This boy had already carried the burden of the Nine Tails since birth. Now he carried something else entirely, something that had apparently been growing inside him in complete secrecy for years without a single adult noticing. If someone else ever got their hands on that kind of power, or worse, if Naruto himself was ever pushed too far, the consequences didn't bear thinking about. Kakashi, for his part, didn't cheer that fear. He had watched Naruto all through the wave mission, had seen the boy quietly risk himself to save strangers who would never even know his name, and he simply didn't believe there was a version of Naruto Uzumaki that turned toward darkness. Still, Hiruzen's concern lingered in the room long after the conversation ended, a quiet shadow that would follow him for years to come. Life moved forward. Kakashi entered the team into the Chunin exams, and it was there that the world truly began to catch its first real glimpse of what Naruto had become. During the second phase, deep in the forest of death, a grass ninja crossed their path, and Naruto knew instantly that something was wrong. It wasn't just the chakra, though the sheer size of those reserves alone would have been enough to give it away, reserves no ordinary genin should ever carry. It was the way the presence itself felt, layered and coiled and ancient beneath a paper-thin disguise. Naruto's senses, sharpened over years of secret training, picked apart the illusion before the stranger had said more than a few words. He moved without hesitation, slicing his hand through the air like a blade and opening a shallow cut across the grass ninja's cheek. The disguise cracked. Orochimaru's true face emerged beneath it, pale and amused, utterly unbothered by having been exposed. He said it didn't matter either way. His true target had never been the loud orange boy standing in front of him. His eyes slid past Naruto entirely, fixing instead on Sasuke. That was the wrong choice. Naruto closed the distance in a blur, seizing Orochimaru by the throat and hurling him bodily into a tree hard enough to splinter the trunk. Orochimaru blinked up at him from the wreckage, genuine surprise flickering behind his slitted eyes, and Naruto was already there, driving his heel down into his face and grinding it into the dirt. Orochimaru's body burst apart from within, a massive snake tearing itself free through his own collapsing form, its jaws parting to reveal the sun and standing unharmed inside, already lashing out with a vicious slash of chakra scalpels. Naruto caught both of his arms, twisted, and sent him rocketing into the sky with a single kick, then appeared above him a heartbeat later, snatched him by the ankle mid-fall, and slammed him back down into the earth with a boom that flattened the surrounding trees. Suspended in the air above the crater, Naruto finally decided to show a piece of what he had spent years building toward. He gathered his chakra and shaped it into something new, something he had been quietly refining for longer than anyone knew, condensing it down into thousands of tiny, glittering bullets of pure raw energy. He released them all at once in a storm that tore into Orochimaru's body from every direction, vaporizing flesh in an instant. Orochimaru's form dissolved into dozens of fleeing snakes, scattering in every direction through the underbrush, but Naruto's senses tracked each of them individually, shaping his chakra into a volley of arrows that punched down through the fleeing serpents one after another. Only a single snake managed to escape, slipping into the shadows and vanishing. Sakura and Sasuke stood frozen at the edge of the clearing, staring at their teammate as though seeing him for the very first time. Naruto gave them the short version, the version that left out years of hidden bruises and cracked training grounds. Sakura's eyes were wide with wonder. Sasuke's jaw was tight, something complicated and bitter twisting behind his expression, though he said nothing about it out loud. Orochimaru, badly shaken by what he had just witnessed, grew genuinely afraid of the boy for the first time in longer than he could remember. He sent Kabuto to quietly observe Naruto over the following weeks, hoping to learn something, anything, that might explain what he had just fought. Kabuto watched carefully, cautiously, and found nothing out of the ordinary at all, which unsettled him more than any obvious display of power could have. Still, Orochimaru decided to proceed with his plans regardless. During the month-long break before the third exam, Jiraiya arrived to oversee Naruto's training personally. He said nothing about Minato, nothing about the past Naruto still didn't know, choosing instead to simply focus on the present in front of him. It didn't take long for Jiraiya's easy confidence to crack. He had Naruto attempt a basic taijutsu spar on the first afternoon, purely to gauge his starting point, and found himself sent tumbling across the clearing by a single restrained tap. He picked himself up out of the dirt, stared at Naruto for a long moment, and then burst into loud, delighted laughter, dragging the boy off toward the nearest hot spring to properly celebrate the discovery of what he half-jokingly began calling his new secret weapon. Over the following weeks, the two of them raced up waterfalls, shattered boulders the size of houses for fun, and Jiraiya, despite years of legendary experience, found himself genuinely and repeatedly stunned by exactly how far Naruto's limits extended. When the third exam finally arrived, Naruto faced Niji Haiga, and it was here that he decided to stop holding back quite so much. Niji spoke at length about fate, about bloodlines, and destiny and the impossibility of ever escaping the role you were born into, launching into his 8 trigrams rotation with the calm certainty of a technique that had never once been broken. Naruto plunged his hand directly into the spinning dome of chakra and simply ripped Niji out of it by the collar, his arm completely unharmed, not a single scratch marking his skin. He told Niji, plainly, that fate wasn't real, that people built their own walls and then blamed the world for building them. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Orochimaru, seated in the stands disguised as the Kaze cage, watched the exchange with quiet fury simmering behind his calm expression, careful never to let it show. Then came the invasion. As Gaara clashed with Sasuke and the Sound Ninja unleashed their barrier around the arena, Orochimaru made his move against Hiruzen. But Naruto had already felt the shift in his chakra the moment it stirred. He tore across the village toward the massive dome the Sound Four had erected to seal Orochimaru and the Hokage inside. The Umbu guarding the perimeter warned him back, insisting the barrier would burn straight through him if he touched it. But Naruto pressed his hand forward anyway and simply ripped the dome open by force, tearing a hole wide enough for the Umbu to pour through and reinforce Hiruzen before the fight could turn any further against him. Orochimaru, cornered and furious, summoned his reanimated Hokages in a desperate bid to buy himself time. But Naruto arrived at the center of it all and went toe-to-toe with the sun indirectly, chakra flowing through him in shapes and forms nobody in that arena had ever seen a shinobi produce before. When it ended, Orochimaru lay still, finished for good. The threat that had haunted the village for years brought to a permanent close by a 12-year-old boy with a system nobody else could see. At the same time, across the arena, Naruto extended his control outward, shaping a clone so precise, so fully realized, that it carried half his full strength within it, sending it to intercept Gaara before the transformation consuming him could finish and level half the village. By the time the dust settled, the world had learned Naruto Uzumaki's name. Sasuke's jealousy, sharp and simmering for weeks, slowly began to soften into something closer to reluctant understanding. He pushed himself harder in their sparring sessions, determined to close a gap he privately suspected could never truly be closed, and Naruto, out of respect for his friend, stopped holding back quite so completely, though the distance between them remained enormous no matter how hard Sasuke fought to close it. Word of the boy who tore Orochimaru apart with his bare hands spread quickly across the nations. Naruto and Jiraiya set out to track down Tsunade, hoping to convince the last Sannin to return and take up the mantle Hiruzen was finally ready to lay down. Along the way, bounty hunters and rogue shinobi occasionally tried their luck against the boy whose name had begun circulating through the underground, drawn by rumor and curiosity. Every single one of them fled the encounter badly beaten and thoroughly humbled. It was during this stretch of travel that the Akatsuki made their first true move. With Jiraiya away scouting ahead, Kisame Hoshigaki and Ataki Uchiha caught up with Naruto alone on the outskirts of a quiet border town. Kisame, never want to waste time on subtlety, went straight for the boy meant to be an easy capture. He was not an easy capture. Naruto caught Same had a mid-swing and simply closed his fist around the blade, crushing the enormous cleaver down into a tight, shrinking ball of ruined metal and bandage wrapping until there was nothing left of it worth wielding. Kisame stared at the wreckage in his own hand, momentarily too stunned to react, giving Naruto the opening to bind him at the wrists and ankles with chains of solid, condensed chakra, shaped with a level of control that left no room for him to slip free. When Kisame summoned a wall of water in a last desperate bid to escape, Naruto simply inhaled it, pulling the entire technique out of the air and down his own throat in one motion, his endurance shrugging off the sheer volume without so much as a cough. Itaki watched the entire exchange from a distance without moving to intervene, his expression giving away nothing, though something behind his eyes had clearly registered exactly how far beyond expectation this fight had gone. When it became obvious that Kisame stood no real chance of success, Itaki called the retreat, and the two of them vanished before Naruto could close the distance further. Itaki returned to the Akatsuki's meeting place and delivered his report with uncharacteristic weight in his voice, warning the organization plainly that the power inside the Nine Tails container had grown into something far beyond anything they had accounted for. Years passed. Naruto trained without pause, his control refining itself to the point where he could shape the wind around his own body and simply lift off the ground, flying wherever he pleased with barely a thought. Jiraiya finally succeeded in bringing Tsunade home, and she took up the hat as Konoha's fifth Hokage while Hiruzen finally allowed himself to rest. Naruto and Jiraiya set off together on the road for what would become nearly 3 years of training, travel, and the occasional wildly destructive act of accidental chaos that left entire training grounds unrecognizable in their wake. Throughout all of it, Noodle remained close, a quiet presence Naruto could summon out into the world beside him whenever he wished, though Noodle himself had never been built for fighting. His body had simply given Naruto the framework to grow, the system itself, and that alone had proven to be more than enough. When Naruto finally returned to the village 3 years later, stronger than anyone could have imagined a person becoming, he found Gaara waiting among his allies rather than his enemies, the bond between them long since mended by words Naruto had spoken to him back during the invasion, words that had quietly changed the course of Gaara's entire life. The Akatsuki, watching from the shadows, grew increasingly cautious. Even Pain, the organization's true leader, found himself privately doubting whether victory against Naruto was still a certainty. The masked men behind the scenes turned the matter over carefully in his mind, aware that any move against Gaara risked Naruto retaliation as well. It was around this time that the world itself began behaving strangely. Rivers surged violently without warning. Tsunamis rose along coastlines that had never known such danger. Tornadoes tore across open plains where the sky had been calm only moments before. It felt, to those who noticed at all, almost like the opening lines of some old, forgotten scripture come to life. And then someone arrived who did not belong to this world at all. He found Naruto in a quiet moment, laughing with friends near the edge of the village, and he did not bother with words. Noodle stirred inside him, some flicker of recognition sparking in the back of his ancient, fractured memory, but before he could voice a warning, the stranger struck. Naruto was sent flying clean across the continent, the impact alone tearing a visible scar through the landscape behind him. For the first time in longer than he could remember, pain actually registered. Naruto spat blood onto the ground, staring at the red on his own hand in genuine disbelief, unable to recall the last time his own body had bled at all. The stranger told him plainly that he would fall here, and that the power resting inside him would soon belong to someone else. Naruto had no idea who this person was, and the man offered no explanation, choosing instead to attack again with a speed and a viciousness Naruto had never once faced in his entire life. Naruto stopped holding back. The two of them collided in a battle that tore the surrounding land apart, chakra clashing against some other unfamiliar form of energy, a deep, coiled purple that pulsed like something alive. The fight dragged them mile after mile from the village, flattening forests and carving new canyons into the earth as it went, until finally, in one decisive clash, Naruto tore the man's arm from his body and drove clean through his side. The stranger collapsed, blood pooling beneath him, disbelief written plainly across his face at the fact that he had actually lost. With his final breath, he warned Naruto that he would not be the last. A surge of dense purple energy flooded into Naruto's body in the instant the man died, and deep within his own mind, Noodle went suddenly, completely still, as though reuniting with some long-lost piece of himself. "What does that mean?" Naruto asked quietly. Noodle didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight Naruto had never heard from him before. He remembered, now, pieces of the truth he had never been able to share, not because he had been hiding it, but because it simply hadn't been there to find until this very moment. There had been 4 of them once. 4 fragments of something far greater than any single one, scattered across the cosmos and bound to 4 chosen individuals, each destined to eventually collide, fight, and merge back into a single whole. The name Naruto had given him years ago, given in innocent childhood affection, had only ever been a placeholder. The truth, the real name, had been lost along with the rest of his memory. Within days, a second stranger appeared, tearing open graves across the countryside and raising the dead in their wake, a battle joined by monstrous constructs shaped from that same familiar purple energy that had flooded into Naruto after the first fight. Naruto met him with constructs of his own, forged from chakra, the two of them clashing in a battle of shapes and forms neither the shinobi world nor whatever world the stranger hailed from had ever witnessed collide before. Then came a third, cloaked in a deep, verdant green energy, capable of raising legions of the restless dead to march against him, an army that fed hungrily on Naruto's own power the moment it drew close. Naruto tore through them regardless and finally came face to face with the one commanding them, a woman who introduced herself simply as Athena. Their battle was long and brutal, her body seemingly beyond the reach of death itself, but in the end Naruto overcame her too. She did not strike him as truly evil, only bound to some purpose he still didn't fully understand, and as she fell, her power flooded into him exactly as the others had, and Noodle remembered further still. What was coming, Noodle finally told him, was destruction. The complete unmaking of Naruto's entire world, his entire universe, unless something changed. Days passed with no sign of the fourth and final piece. Days Naruto spent handling fresh Akatsuki movements and the ordinary business of being a shinobi as though the weight of an unraveling multiverse wasn't quietly settling onto his shoulders. When the last one finally did arrive, he came cloaked in a deep, glowing yellow, and unlike the others, he came to talk first. He introduced himself as Ramiel. He explained, with a heaviness that suggested he took no pleasure in any of it, that he had never wanted any part of this, that he had only ever sought power enough to protect his own world, and had found himself dragged into this cosmic contest against his will regardless. He couldn't fully explain why Naruto alone seemed to have been left in the dark about the nature of this entire conflict while the rest of them had understood from the very beginning, though he suspected it traced back to whatever strange accident had first fused Noodle with the Nine Tails' own seal all those years ago, warping the process somewhere along the way. Only one of them would be allowed to walk away from this. Ramiel said it plainly. Sadness threaded through every word, and then he fought, though it was clear from the very first exchange that his heart was never fully in it. He was simply a man trying to survive long enough to save the only world he had ever known. In the end, despite everything, Naruto won. The last of the four powers flooded into him, completing whatever process had been set in motion the moment he first tapped his belly as a 5-year-old boy and found a bar only he could see. Noodle finally understood the whole truth of himself. He wasn't a person at all, not really, not in the way Naruto had always assumed. He was a power known, in whatever language existed to properly name such things, as the Chosen, and now, at long last, fully whole and fully awake inside the boy who had given him a ridiculous name out of nothing but kindness. It was not long after this that someone else arrived to explain the rest. Shibuya Satsuki came to Naruto through the body of one of his own descendants, a young man named Momoshiki, though Momoshiki himself had no true control over his own limbs in that moment. He explained, calmly, that he was merely a vessel, and that the one truly speaking through him was Shive. Shive told Naruto the story at last. He had been born from the Tree of Life, a living representation of the entire universe itself, and upon ascending beyond the limits of ordinary existence, he had encountered counterparts of himself scattered across other, mirrored universes, each one bound to a world eerily similar to his own. A being higher than any of them, something ancient and almost incomprehensibly vast, had granted each of these four Shiva the power to disperse a fragment of themselves into their respective worlds, choosing a single mortal in each to carry it, because something terrible was coming for all of them. The four universes, it turned out, had always been linked, tied together since the very beginning by something flawed woven into their shared foundation, and that flow had drawn the attention of a hunger vast enough to consume entire realities. If it succeeded here, it would not stop. It would spread outward, devouring world after world without end, and these four linked universes were only the beginning of its meal. Naruto had been chosen. He had survived. The others, in their own worlds, had not been so fortunate. Their power had already been lost, their universes already erased before the threat had even fully understood what it was doing. That left only this world, and only Naruto, standing between whatever was coming and complete annihilation. Even Shivi admitted he didn't fully grasp the true scope of the threat, only that it was close now, closer than any of them had accounted for. And Naruto could feel it too, now, a cold and formless pressure settling somewhere at the edge of his senses. The thing had no true shape of its own. It needed a vessel, something familiar to hide inside, something tied closely enough to Naruto that it could slip past every instinct he had. It had found Sakura. It had felt her through the bond of the Chosen's power, felt exactly how much she mattered to him, and used that connection to slip inside her without anyone noticing a thing was wrong. Naruto tore back toward the village the moment the truth settled into place, dread building with every step, and there she was, standing quietly at the gates as though she had been waiting for him all along. But the moment his eyes met hers, he knew. Whatever stood in front of him wearing Sakura's face, it wasn't her. Not anymore. Time skip. Before there was chakra. Before there were villages, or clans, or names for anything at all, there was only the deity. He had no true form in those early ages, only presence, a vast and patient awareness stretched across 4 universes that mirrored one another like reflections in still water. He was their beginning and their keeper both, watching over each of the 4 worlds the way a gardener watches over 4 separate plots grown from the very same seed. For a long, long while, that was enough. The worlds turned. Life rose and fell within them. And the deity watched. But nothing that exists stays hidden forever, and something eventually noticed him. It came from outside the 4 worlds entirely, from the cold black spaces between realities where nothing was ever meant to survive, let alone hunger. It had no name of its own, only an endless, gnawing need to consume, and it fixed its attention on the deity's 4 linked universes the way a starving animal fixes its attention on the first warmth it has felt in an age. It came for him, and it came for everything he protected, and the deity understood almost immediately that he could not defeat it. Not alone. Not whole. So he did the only thing he could. He tore himself apart on purpose. He split his own essence into 4 equal fragments, one for each of the universes he had always watched over, and with the last of his unified strength, he built a prison around the devourer using the 4 worlds themselves as its bars, a mirrored cage held together by the very fact that all 4 realities were bound to one another. The devourer could not break a prison made of 4 things at once unless it could somehow corrupt or claim every piece simultaneously. And so, sealed and starving, it waited in the dark between the mirrors, patient in the way only something ancient and endless can afford to be. Each fragment of the deity drifted down into its own world and found a single soul to bind itself to, a chosen vessel through which it could grow, learn, and eventually gather enough strength to keep the prison sealed forever, or, if fate allowed, to end the devourer for good. In one world, that fragment found a warrior wrapped in purple light. In another, a woman who learned to call the dead back from their rest, wrapped in green. In a third, a reluctant protector wrapped in gold, fighting only because his own world had been threatened. And in this one, in the world of chakra and shinobi, that fragment slipped into the seal of a newborn boy on the worst night of his life, tangled itself around a fox that was never truly there to begin with, and waited 5 quiet years before a lonely 5-year-old boy ever tapped his own belly and gave it a ridiculous name. The prison held for longer than anyone could count. But prisons, even ones built from gods, are not eternal. Somewhere along the way, the devourer found the first crack, and it began, slowly and patiently, prying the 4 worlds apart from one another, fragment by fragment, fight by fight, until only one remained unclaimed. This one. Naruto's world. Naruto himself. And now, at last, the deity understood, fully and completely, exactly what he had built Naruto into, because in defeating the other 3 and absorbing their power, in becoming whole again inside a single mortal body, the deity had not just returned. He had been reborn, memory and purpose and history flooding back into Naruto all at once, a lifetime of cosmic knowledge settling into the mind of a boy who, 5 minutes earlier, had simply been standing at the gates of his own village, staring in horror at the thing wearing his best friend's face. "You're so fond of these insects," the thing inside Sakura said, tilting her head at an angle no human neck should manage, "despite the power you carry now. I must say, you truly are pathetic." Suzuki arrived at that exact moment, drawn by some instinct that something was deeply wrong, and the thing turned toward him with Sakura's familiar smile stretched a fraction too wide across her face. Naruto shouted at him to get back, but the warning came a half-second too late. Sakura's hand punched clean through Suzuki's stomach, the motion almost lazy, almost bored, and she tossed him to the ground like discarded paper, still smiling. Naruto's foot connected with her ribs before the sound of Suzuki's body hitting the dirt had even finished echoing. The kick sent her hurtling backward through the stone memorial at the center of the village, shattering it into rubble before she vanished into the tree line beyond. Naruto didn't chase her yet. He dropped to his knees beside Suzuki first, pressing his palm flat against the wound, chakra pouring out of him in a warm golden flood, knitting torn muscle and shattered bone back together with a delicacy that felt almost impossible coming from hands that had crushed a legendary sword into scrap only years earlier. Suzuki's eyes fluttered open, disoriented, pain fading fast beneath Naruto's touch. "What the hell was that?" he managed. "That's not Sakura," Naruto said quietly, and then he was gone, rising into the sky after her before Suzuki could ask anything more. He found her hovering above the tree line, arms loose at her sides, an easy, mocking smile still fixed on Sakura's stolen face. Naruto stopped a short distance away, chest tight with something that wasn't fear. Not exactly, but close enough to it that he didn't bother pretending otherwise. "I'm going to stop this," he said. "Right here. With you. It ends now." The thing laughed, a sound that came out of Sakura's throat but belonged to something far older and far colder. And then it came at him, and the sky itself seemed to flinch. What followed was not a fight so much as an unmaking of the landscape for 100 miles in every direction. Naruto opened with a wave of golden bullets, the same technique he had once used to tear Orochimaru apart piece by piece, thousands of dense, glittering rounds of raw chakra screaming through the air. The devourer didn't dodge. It simply raised one hand and swallowed the entire volley whole, the bullets folding into its palm and vanishing as though they had never existed. And Naruto understood in that instant, with a cold drop in his stomach, exactly what the word devourer actually meant. It didn't just fight. It consumed. Every strike he threw was fuel if it landed cleanly enough to be caught. So he stopped throwing things it could catch. He surged forward instead, closing the distance in a blur, and drove a fist into where its stomach should have been. The impact cracked the air itself, a visible ring of distorted pressure rippling outward and flattening the forest below into splinters. The devourer staggered, genuinely staggered, or the first time since the fight began, and Naruto pressed the advantage immediately, chaining strike after strike, shaping his fists with condensed purple energy on one side and roiling green on the other. The two powers he had inherited from the fallen fragments layered directly into his knuckles like armor. Each blow that connected tore visible gashes through the air, wounds in reality itself that sealed shut a heartbeat later. The devourer recovered fast, far too fast, and retaliated with a strike that Naruto barely managed to angle away from, the mere edge of it clipping his shoulder and turning the limb briefly, horrifyingly translucent, as though the technique had begun erasing him from existence starting at the point of contact. He wrenched away, forced Noodle's fused power through the wound, and watched his own arm knit itself back into solid form. The erosion halted, though not without cost, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion settling into muscles that had never once felt tired in his entire life. They collided again and again, dragging the battle across the sky in streaks of gold, purple, and green, each clash detonating with enough force to hollow out fresh craters into the earth below, boiling entire lakes dry in an instant, splitting mountains clean in half from the shock waves alone. Naruto called constructs into being, giant spears, and shields forged from raw chakra given the same solidity as the ones he had traded blows with weeks earlier, hurling them in relentless volleys, weaving between his own creations to strike from angles the devourer couldn't track. He summoned an army of clones, each one carrying a fraction of his full strength, flooding the sky around the devourer from every direction at once, forcing it to spend precious moments unraveling wave after wave of them even as more kept coming. None of it was enough. The devourer began to change tactics, no longer simply defending but actively unraveling the battlefield itself, pulling threads of matter and chakra alike out of the world around them and folding it hungrily into its own growing mess. Trees vanished midair before they could even finish falling. Chunks of mountains simply ceased to be, swallowed into whatever hollow, endless space existed behind Sakura's stolen eyes. Naruto felt his own strength beginning to bleed away the longer the fight dragged on, not through any single decisive blow, but through a slow, patient siphoning, the devourer feeding on the sheer scale of the violence itself. He understood, somewhere in the exhausted, battered clarity of that moment, exactly why the deity had chosen to imprison this thing instead of destroying it outright all those ages ago. It could not simply be beaten. Every wound, every ounce of power thrown against it, only fed it further. Which meant there was only one path left. Naruto forced himself upward, past the shattered clouds, dragging the fight higher and higher until the curve of the world itself began to bend visibly beneath them, past the thin edge of the sky and out into the cold black quiet of open space, the elemental nations shrinking to a marble far below. The devourer followed, delighted, certain this final desperate flight meant exactly what it looked like. It had no idea what Naruto actually intended. He reached out and closed his hand around Sakura's wrist, and for the briefest possible moment, buried somewhere beneath the thing wearing her, he felt something familiar flicker back, faint and frightened and unmistakably her. He held on. "I'm sorry," he told her, and he meant it with everything left inside him. Then he let go of every restraint he had ever placed on himself. Every fragment of the deity's power, fully reunited and fully awake, surged outward from the center of his chest all at once, chakra and something far older than chakra fusing together into a single, violent point of light. He poured his own life into it without hesitation, feeding the surge with everything he was, health and strength and endurance and years of secret training all collapsing inward into one final, unstoppable ignition. The devourer tried to flee. For the first time in the entire battle, it tried to run, sensing too late exactly what was about to happen. But Naruto's grip didn't loosen, not even for an instant. He pushed Sakura away from himself with the last coherent motion his body had left in it, hurling her back toward the distant blue marble of home with every ounce of gentleness he could still summon. The devourer's stolen hold on her ripped violently loose in the same motion, torn free and left behind with nothing left to anchor it to her anymore. And then Naruto went nuclear. The light that followed was seen from every corner of the elemental nations, a brief, silent flash brighter than the sun itself, high above the clouds where no one could see exactly what had happened, only that something impossibly large had ended. When it faded, there was nothing left where Naruto had been. No devourer. No trace. Only silence, and a Sakura who fell gently back into the atmosphere alone, alive, and utterly changed by what had just passed through her. She woke on the outskirts of the village 3 days later with no memory of how she had gotten there, only a hollow, aching certainty that something enormous had happened, and that Naruto was gone. The village mourned in a way it had never mourned before, not even for the fourth Hokage. Jiraiya wept openly, something none of his students had ever seen him do. Tsunade closed herself in her office for 2 full days before finally emerging to address the village. Suzuki stood at the ruined memorial stone, the one Naruto had knocked Sakura through only days earlier, and said nothing at all for a very long time. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The Akatsuki, already crushed under the weight of Naruto's earlier campaigns against them, posed no further threat, their ambitions dead alongside their strongest members. A new memorial stone was raised where the old one had shattered, Naruto's name carved into it beside a simple inscription that spoke of a boy who only ever wanted friendship and happiness, and who gave everything he had to save far more than just his own home. His body was never found. There was nothing left to bury. But something had happened to Sakura in that last instant before the light swallowed everything. She had felt it settle into her the moment his hand released hers, a small, quiet warmth tucked somewhere deep inside her chest that never quite faded no matter how much time passed. She didn't understand it at first. She only knew that as the months wore on, it grew steadily stronger, a pull she couldn't quite explain, drawing her thoughts again and again toward a specific stretch of barren land far outside the village, the same place where, years earlier, the very first stranger had struck Naruto so hard he bled for the first time in his life. She finally gave into it on a quiet morning in early spring, walking out alone until she found the place, an old, faded stain still marking the earth where his blood had once fallen. She knelt beside it and pressed her palm flat against the ground, and the moment skin touched stain, the world around her seemed to hold its breath. Light bloomed up from the earth, gentle and warm, nothing like the violent flash that had ended the battle months earlier. The stained ground softened, folded, and began to take shape, cultivating itself the way a seed pulls itself upward toward the sun, gathering the lingering fragments of blood and power and something achingly familiar into a single growing form. Sakura stumbled backward, hand pressed to her mouth, as Naruto Uzumaki opened his eyes for the first time in months. He looked exactly as he had the day he vanished, whiskered cheeks and messy hair and all, blinking up at the sky with the same confused, half-awake expression he always wore right after waking from a nap. His mind was entirely his own. His memories, every last one of them, sat intact and unbroken behind his eyes. But his body, rebuilt from nothing but a single stain of blood and whatever fragments of him had lingered inside Sakura since that final touch, was not the same body that had exploded somewhere past the edge of the world. 90% of the strength he had spent his whole life building was simply gone, burned away entirely in that final sacrifice, never to return. He was still, by any ordinary measure, one of the most powerful people alive. He was simply no longer a god among mortals. He was, once again, just remarkably strong. Sakura didn't care in the slightest. She threw herself at him so hard they both toppled back into the dirt, sobbing and laughing at the same time, and Naruto held onto her like he never intended to let go again. The darkness that had crept steadily over all four universes for years finally lifted the moment the Devourer ceased to exist. The ripple of its ending felt across realities that had suffered under its slow, patient hunger for far longer than Naruto had ever known. Shibuya Satsuki felt it too, and understood, with a clarity that had taken him lifetimes to reach, exactly what had been sacrificed to bring that silence about. He knew his own descendants better than anyone, knew the darker corners of ambition that ran through the Itsutsuki bloodline like a current impossible to fully dam. So he did the one thing left within his power to offer as thanks. He wrapped Naruto's entire world in a quiet, careful veil, hidden away from its Satsuki eyes and its Satsuki ambition alike, sealing it off gently from the wider troubles of the cosmos. Shiva himself had once been little different from the Devourer in scale, a being who consumed and grew and reached for more. But watching Naruto choose to erase himself rather than let harm reach a single friend had shifted something fundamental in him. He chose, from that point forward, to let this one small, stubborn, orange cloud world simply be. To let Naruto live the rest of his life exactly as he always said he wanted to, surrounded by the people he loved, in peace. Many years passed after that, quiet, ordinary years filled with the kind of happiness Naruto had chased his entire life without ever fully believing he deserved it. On a warm evening decades later, an old man with faded whisker marks and silver-streaked hair sat on the porch of a modest house at the edge of Konoha, surrounded by a small circle of grandchildren who had heard this particular story more times than they could count and still never seemed to tire of it. He told them about the bar only he could see, about a boy who once broke tree bark with a single punch, About a friend named Noodle who turned out to be far more than either of them ever expected. About 4 fragments of a shattered god and the endless hungry dark that had once threatened to swallow everything. One of the smaller grandchildren, arms crossed and utterly unconvinced, squinted up at him from the porch steps. "Come on, Grandpa," she said. "You didn't really do all that." Naruto just smiled, the same wide, easy smile he'd carried since he was 5 years old, poking curiously at his own stomach, and reached over to ruffle her hair. "Ask your grandmother," he said. She was there for the good part. And from somewhere inside the house, Sakura's voice called back, warm and laughing, that every single word of it was true, and somewhere deep inside him, quiet now, content, and finally, truly at rest, Noodle simply smiled along with the rest of them. The end.
That's it. More to come. I hope you guys enjoy. Peace.